So, imagine this. You are staring blankly at an open tab on your browser.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Right. You have a critical deadline in like exactly 1 hour. You know exactly what needs to be done, but you literally cannot force your hand to click the mouse and start typing.
You're just completely frozen.
Exactly. You are frozen. And the question for you today is, are you just distracted? Are you lazy? Or is it ADHD?
Yeah, that is a scenario that plays out in millions of homes and offices every single day.
Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Because honestly, navigating that exact question is probably one of the most crucial mental health challenges of our current era.
Wow, you really think so?
I do, because what we're seeing across the board is just this massive cultural confusion, conflating normal everyday distraction with an actual clinical neurological disorder.
Right.
And that is leading us into this massive wave of both overdiagnosis and underdiagnosis in society.
Which is just wild.
It is.
Yeah.
We are somehow managing to get it spectacularly wrong in both directions simultaneously.
Okay, well, let's unpack this. Because finding clarity in all that confusion is exactly our mission today.
Absolutely.
To figure out how to get it right, we're diving into some really fascinating clinical notes and resources. They were provided by Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC.
Right, the telehealth practice.
Yeah, exactly. They're a telehealth therapy practice based over in Georgia, and their clinicians are dealing with this diagnostic puzzle on the front lines every single day.
Which is so valuable for us to look at.
Definitely. So our mission for this deep dive is to, look at their clinical insights, separate the cultural myths from the biological facts, and basically give you a clear map of what is actually going on inside the brain.
And that is a vital mission.
Yeah.
Because honestly, until we clarify the underlying mechanisms of this disorder, people who desperately need help they'll continue falling through the cracks, while others, are being pathologized for simply experiencing the modern human condition.
That's a really good point. So to even begin understanding how to get a proper diagnosis, we kind of have to dismantle this massive cultural narrative.
Oh, the phrase.
Yes, the phrase. It is the most common phrase people use when they lose their train of thought or forget why they walked into a room.
Right.
You hear it at parties, you hear it in the office. People always say, oh, everyone is a little ADHD.
Yeah, you hear that everywhere.
And I always thought, saying everyone is a little ADHD is like saying everyone is a little nearsighted, just because they occasionally have to squint at a tiny font on a medicine bottle.
Oh, I love that. That analogy perfectly captures the friction between a universal experience and a really specific condition.
Yeah.
Yeah, because according to the clinical insights from the front lines, that phrase, everyone is a little ADHD, is incredibly fascinating.
Oh, so?
Because it is simultaneously absolutely true and completely wrong.
Okay, wait. I want to dig into that contradiction. How can a clinical truth exist in both of those spaces at once?
Well, it's true in the biological sense that every human being on the planet experiences attention lapses.
Sure.
We all have normal cognitive fluctuations. I mean, your focus is not a static laser beam.
Right, obviously.
It wavers constantly based on your sleep quality, your stress levels, your baseline nutrition, or simply how interested you are in a topic.
Makes sense.
So, yes, everyone experiences the symptoms of distraction or forgetfulness in isolation. But, and here's the kicker, the phrase is fundamentally wrong, because true clinical ADHD is defined by a pervasive pattern of impairment.
Impairment?
Yes. It's not just having a bad Tuesday where you accidentally left your coffee on the roof of your car.
Right. Which brings up a classic minimization tactic, because people love to say, well, everyone loses their keys sometimes.
Yeah.
They use it as a way to brush off someone who is genuinely struggling. But the clinicians point out that clinical ADHD is a pattern of executive dysfunction that significantly impairs daily life. And I want to pause here for a second, because executive dysfunction is one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot on social media without much explanation.
It really does. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So to break that down, think of the prefrontal cortex of your brain as the CEO of a company.
Okay, the CEO.
Right. This CEO is in charge of your executive functions. So that's planning, initiating tasks, organizing information, and regulating your emotions.
So all the big picture stuff.
Exactly. Now, when you are neurotypical, your CEO is generally sitting at the desk managing the flow of the day.
Right.
But in an ADHD brain, that CEO is frequently out of the office or Like the intercom system is completely broken.
Oh, wow. So if your brain CEO is missing, it's not just about losing your keys once a month.
No, not at all.
That's just a normal cognitive fluctuation. But impairment means you are consistently losing your keys, missing critical deadlines, damaging your relationships.
Facing severe consequences at work.
Right. Because your brain literally cannot organize and execute the steps required to function in a neurotypical world.
Exactly.
That is the line between occasionally squinting at a tiny font and, well, needing a permanent prescription for glasses.
That is the threshold of impairment.
Yeah.
And understanding that threshold is what shifts this entire conversation away from behavior and into biology.
Okay, and I want to push back a little here.
Sure.
If someone's life is actively becoming disorganized, right? If they are failing at work or school, why can't they just force themselves to sit down and do it?
Right.
I mean, we've all had to push through boring, agonizing tasks. We've all been told to just try harder or buy a better planner. Where does willpower end and neurology begin?
See, that right there is the most destructive fallacy surrounding this condition.
Really?
Yes, if ADHD isn't just a bad Tuesday, then the traditional advice of just try harder isn't just unhelpful, it is scientifically flawed.
How so?
Well, we have to look at the mechanism of dopamine in the brain to understand why.
Okay, dopamine, which usually gets talked about as the pleasure chemical, right? Like the hit you get from eating chocolate or getting a notification on your phone. But it does a lot more than that, doesn't it?
Oh, much more. Dopamine is actually the brain's anticipation or save progress chemical.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it is heavily involved in motivation. So when a neurotypical person has a mundane task to do, like doing their taxes or writing a dull report,
The fun stuff.
exactly, their brain can supply a steady drip of dopamine just by anticipating the completion of that task.
Just knowing it'll be done feels good.
Right. And that neurochemical drip is what allows them to push through the boredom.
Okay.
But the ADHD brain's reward system is structurally different. It does not supply that drip. The brain is literally starved for neurochemical engagement.
Wow, so it's essentially like a car with a broken starter motor.
Oh, yes.
Like the engine itself, their intelligence, their capability, their desire to do the work is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But the spark needed to actually turn the engine on and initiate the task is just missing.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. I mean, you wouldn't stand in your driveway yelling at a car with a broken starter motor to just try harder to start.
No, you'd look ridiculous.
Exactly. And that is why telling someone with ADHD to just knuckle down isn't a motivational speech. Clinicians consider it neurologically unfair.
Neurologically unfair.
Yeah, you are asking them to use a chemical bridge that simply is not there.
Neurologically unfair. I mean, that phrase reframes the entire struggle.
It really does.
It shifts the blame from this moral failing of laziness to a structural reality of the brain.
Exactly.
But even with that understanding, society still clings to a very specific, outdated stereotype of what this condition looks like.
Oh, absolutely.
When people hear ADHD, they immediately picture an 8-year-old boy physically bouncing off the walls of a classroom and disrupting everyone around him.
Yeah, the hyperactive presentation. It's the entrenched cultural stereotype because, well, it's the loudest.
It's hard to ignore.
Right, it demands attention from teachers and parents.
Mm-hmm.
But the clinical data reveals a massive reality check regarding the inattentive subtype,
Okay, the inattentive subtype.
which is just as real but entirely invisible.
Wait, how does hyperactivity present if it's invisible?
Because the hyperactivity in the inattentive subtype is internal.
Internal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of bouncing around a physical room, their mind is bouncing around 100 different thoughts.
Oh, wow.
It is a profound inability to direct focus. It's like a constant internal channel surfing.
So it's still hyperactive, just inside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But because these individuals aren't disrupting the classroom, because they're just staring quietly out the window,
Yeah.
or hyper-focusing silently on a book or a screen, they fly entirely under the radar.
Yeah, they don't get flagged for an evaluation in 3rd grade.
No, never.
They just get labeled as daydreamy or careless or told they're not living up to their potential.
Which is so damaging.
And the cascading effect of that oversight has to be devastating. I mean, it explains a major fascinating trend we are seeing today in the clinical data from coping and healing counseling.
Ah, you're referring to the surge in adult diagnoses.
Yes, because the CHC clinic data highlights that the vast majority of their current ADHD diagnoses are actually adults.
Isn't that wild?
It thoroughly busts the myth that adults cannot get diagnosed or that this is just a childhood phase you magically grow out of when you turn 18.
Right. And what's fascinating here is if we connect this to the bigger picture, these adults are the grown-up versions of those quiet kids with the inattentive subtype.
The daydreamers.
Exactly. They have spent decades internalizing that try harder fallacy.
Oof.
Because their impairment wasn't loud or disruptive to others, they spent their whole lives masking their struggles. They were dealing with profound executive dysfunction completely on their own and just assuming they were simply broken.
Masking has to be exhausting.
It is.
Trying to manually operate the machinery of your brain every single day just to appear like you're functioning normally.
Yeah.
It's no wonder so many of these adults eventually hit a wall of burnout.
The exhaustion is palpable. And it brings us to the core diagnostic challenge clinicians are facing right now.
Okay.
Because we have this really messy cultural landscape.
Yeah.
On one side, we have an overdiagnosis problem. You have perfectly neurotypical people experiencing normal cognitive fluctuations. Perhaps they have a bad week at work, they see a highly relatable video on social media about losing track of time.
And they immediately assume they have a clinical disorder.
Precisely. They are pathologizing the normal human experience of distraction.
Which makes it harder for everyone else.
It does. And on the flip side, we have a severe underdiagnosis problem.
Right, the missing adults.
Yeah. We are still missing those adults who have suffered from the inattentive subtype their whole lives, who are quietly drowning in executive dysfunction, but who think their struggles aren't loud enough to warrant clinical help.
So if you are listening to this right now, and you find yourself caught in this chaotic environment of over- and underdiagnosis, I mean, where do you even start?
It's a great question.
Because if it is so easy to confuse a bad Tuesday with a structural difference in your brain's reward processing, you need a map.
You definitely need a map. You need a validated tool to help separate normal fluctuation from true clinical pathology. You absolutely cannot rely on social media algorithms to diagnose you.
No. And the clinicians actually point toward a very specific starting line, right? The ASRS V1.1.
Yes.
Which, I'm sorry, sounds like a barcode, so let's clarify what that actually is.
Fair enough. The acronym stands for the Adult ADHD Self-Report Scale.
Okay.
It was actually developed in conjunction with the World Health Organization. And it is a validated, structured way to look at your specific behaviors to see if they align with the actual criteria for impairment rather than just general, everyday distractedness.
What's incredibly practical here is how accessible CHC has made this.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they offer a free 3-minute online version of the screener right on their website at cheektherapy.com/mental health tests.
It's a great resource.
But I think it's crucial to set expectations. If someone takes 3 minutes to fill this out, what is actually happening behind the scenes?
Right. It is deeply important to understand what a screener is and what it isn't.
Yeah.
No 3-minute online quiz can officially diagnose you.
Right, of course.
What this specific tool does is utilize a 6-question Part A screener to look for the most highly predictive markers of the disorder.
Predictive markers meaning the specific types of dysfunction that almost never happen to neurotypical people but happen constantly to people with the disorder.
Exactly. It filters out the noise. It provides an evidence-based threshold.
Okay.
So if your answers come back positive on this specific Part A screener, it formally recommends a full clinical evaluation.
I see.
It gives you a clinically sound, data-backed reason to seek a professional opinion, kind of cutting through both the denial and the hype.
Got it. But, taking a screener in the comfort of your home is the easy part.
Very true.
The harsh reality of mental health care is that getting a full evaluation and actually getting a treatment plan often hits a massive wall of systemic barriers.
Oh, massive barriers.
We are talking about geographical isolation, financial roadblocks, and wait lists that stretch for like 6 to 8 months. And there is a cruel irony here, right? Navigating the healthcare system requires an immense amount of executive function.
It is the ultimate catch-22.
Yeah.
Because asking someone who is actively suffering from executive dysfunction to, organize a complex commute, navigate insurance phone trees, take half a day off work, and sit in the physical waiting room.
It's impossible.
It's often the very barrier that guarantees they never get the help they need.
Which is why coping and healing counseling's specific clinical model is such a fascinating case study in solving this systemic problem.
It really is.
I mean, their logistical execution is designed specifically to dismantle those exact barriers.
Because telehealth is the great equalizer in this specific scenario.
It really is. I kind of marvel at the logistics of it. CHC operates as a 100% telehealth, IKA compliant practice.
Right.
By removing the physical waiting room from the equation, they have built the logistical capacity to serve all 159 counties in the state of Georgia.
Think about what that means for accessibility.
It's huge. Whether you are living in a high-rise in downtown Atlanta or you are in a deeply rural part of the state where the nearest psychiatric specialist might be a 2-hour drive away, you have the exact same access to care.
Exactly.
Bringing the evaluation directly to someone's laptop or phone entirely removes that executive function tax of seeking treatment.
And providing access is really only half the battle, right? The quality and the scope of that access matter immensely
Sure.
because a single practitioner can only do so much.
Right, and their infrastructure addresses that too. I mean, the stats are impressive. They have built a diverse, culturally competent team of over 15 licensed therapists.
That's a solid team.
And they carry a variety of credentials, so LCSWs, LPCs, and LMFTs.
Which, for those who don't know, stands for Licensed Clinical Social Workers, Licensed Professional Counselors, and Licensed Marriage and Family Therapists.
It's good to clarify.
Yeah, and having that variety is crucial because it allows the clinic to tailor care to the specific cultural and psychological background of the patient.
And it means they don't just hand you an ADHD diagnosis and send you on your way.
No.
They offer a full spectrum of care. We're talking individual therapy, couples and family therapy, teen therapy for ages 13 and up, and even life coaching.
That's a really wide net.
Right. And their specialties cover a massive range: anxiety, depression, trauma, grief, PTSD, relationship stress.
Which is so important.
Right, because honestly, if you have been an undiagnosed adult dealing with an invisible neurodevelopmental disorder your whole life, you are absolutely carrying secondary trauma and severe anxiety alongside it.
Oh, it is almost a clinical guarantee.
Yeah.
The chronic stress of chronic failure or, the perceived failure of not being able to keep up with your peers, it leaves deep psychological scars.
I can only imagine.
So treating the ADHD means treating the whole person. They need to mourn the lost years where they thought they were just lazy.
That's a really powerful way to put it.
And furthermore, if a diagnosis is confirmed through their comprehensive evaluations, CHC notes that they coordinate treatment plans directly with prescribers where appropriate.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they close the clinical loop.
That's amazing. But let's tackle the final and often the most intimidating barrier, the financial reality.
Always a big question.
Because the CHC data explicitly outlines their cost structures, and I want to share them because, well, financial transparency in healthcare shouldn't be a luxury.
Absolutely not.
It is a critical part of making care accessible.
Because transparency prevents individuals from giving up before they even start, just out of fear of hidden costs.
Exactly. So for Medicaid patients in Georgia, there is a $0 copay. The specialized care is fully covered.
That's incredible.
And for commercial insurance, they accept major providers like Aetna, Cigna, BCBS, UHC, and Humana. The cost is a $10 to $40 copay per session.
Wow. So they've really built a financial model that makes comprehensive mental health care accessible to an incredibly broad socioeconomic demographic.
Yep. Not just those who can afford thousands of dollars out of pocket.
Right. It functions as a comprehensive safety net, purposefully designed to catch the exact individuals who have been quietly falling through the cracks of the modern medical system for decades.
So, if you are in Georgia and anything we've discussed today is resonating with your daily experience, reaching out is super straightforward.
What's the best way?
Their phone number is 404-832-0102. You can email their team at support@chaketherapy.com. And again, their website where you can find that 3-minute screener and explore their services is chaketherapy.com.
It really is a remarkable blueprint for how clinical infrastructure can adapt to meet human need.
It truly is. So let's take a step back and sort of summarize the journey we've been on today.
Let's do it.
We started by dismantling the myth of the bad Tuesday.
Right.
We established that occasionally losing your train of thought is just part of the human condition. But a pervasive pattern of executive dysfunction where your brain's CEO is chronically missing in action is a clinical reality.
And we dove into the biological mechanism behind that dysfunction.
The dopamine.
Exactly. We look at how dopamine acts as an anticipation of motivation chemical and how the ADHD brain's structural lack of that chemical makes the command to just try harder. Fundamentally neurologically unfair.
It is a broken starter motor, not a broken engine.
Perfectly said.
And we uncovered the silent struggle of the inattentive subtype, explaining why so many adults are finally seeking answers today after decades of exhausting masking.
Yeah.
And finally, we explored how the 100% telehealth model utilized by clinics like CHC in Georgia is systematically breaking down the geographical, executive, and financial barriers to actual treatment.
Which brings us directly to you, the listener,
Yes.
because the clinicians on the front lines have a very direct urging that we want to pass along.
What's the message?
If you have been listening to this deep dive and you suspect that your distraction goes deeper than just normal, everyday cognitive fatigue.
If it feels like true impairment?
Exactly. If it feels like true impairment, do not just sit in the dark wondering. Don't rely on a social media algorithm to tell you who you are.
Right.
Take the free, validated adult ADHD screener. Get real answers. Make a real plan.
Get real answers, because finally, understanding how your specific brain is wired is the ultimate shortcut to being able to navigate your life with compassion instead of constant frustration.
It really is. And, connecting all of this to the bigger picture raises a pretty profound final thought to leave you with today.
Okay, I'm ready.
We've spent a lot of time discussing how the core of ADHD involves a brain that is literally wired to process motivation and reward differently than the neurotypical baseline.
Right, the hardware itself is different.
Exactly. So if that is biologically true, perhaps the ultimate question we should be pondering isn't just about how to therapeutically treat or medicate the individual so they can comfortably fit into the modern corporate workplace.
Wait, what else would it be?
Well, perhaps we also need to ask ourselves how the modern world's relentless, grueling demand for a constant, unrewarding focus might be fundamentally misaligned with human neurology itself.
Oh, wow. That's a perspective shift that really makes you stop and evaluate the world we've built.
Right.
If we go back to our analogy from the beginning, maybe the problem isn't just that a specific group of people inherently need prescription glasses.
Right.
Maybe the larger problem is that modern society is relentlessly forcing all of us to read tiny, uninteresting font all day, every day, and wondering why so many of us are developing a headache.
That is something substantial to mull over the next time you find yourself staring blankly at an open browser tab, wondering why you can't just force yourself to click the mouse.
A perfect place to leave it. Until next time, keep digging deep.